Well, good afternoon, everyone. Scott Henderson, shooter. Hey, we are going to go over some charts, see if we can try and figure out what the heck's going on here in this market. Of course, at the end of our presentation, please do review our disclosure. Let's jump right into this. All right, starting with the S&P 500 via the SPY ETF. If you look at RSI here, we have some clean divergence on this low. Took out this prior low, so it kind of was a stop run. So I do think we come and take out or put in this high off of this broadening formation because we pretty much have skirted this. That would be consistent with the look. Three peaking drives and then a impulse, then an ABC structure flat as far as the corrective leg. So unless we take out this 671, I think we're heading back up towards the top of this range at 706. Now, if we look at this as peaking drive 1, this is peaking drive 2, obviously peaking drive 3 could overshoot. So we could go all the way up to 710, 715 in that range back to the upside. Now, that does not silence Iran. And realize as soon as Mr. Market, what we popped on today, this whole recovery rally today, really since yesterday, was under the hopes that some kind of deal was going to be made. And to be very candid, I can't tell. There is so much noise out there, so much regurgitation of the news that I cannot distinguish what's real or not. Right. That makes it very challenging for me. So, however, once we put in this top on that broadening formation, and now notice how broad I'm out here. April, we could be here to the end of April, up in this top part of this range. Now, if you noticed my flow analysis today that I put out there, how thin the $1 million group of contracts were. Institutions are not chasing this. They're using retail's liquidity to sell their position because there was no position. No long position. Not in any of the major names, not in the ETFs, none of them, okay? Outside of gold, right, Amazon and Tesla and Bitcoin, it was like a ghost town. I mean, there were a couple names. Intuit, which was a decent put. Didn't throw that out there, which I should have this morning, but I didn't. However, I think once we put in this top, whether it's an overshoot or not, anytime we have three peaking drives, peaking drive 1, peaking drive 2, peaking drive 3 can always be that overshoot. Then we're looking back at a test of the lows. And if you look at where our speed line is off of our prior low, I mean, we're right here. If we come in here, bring in another speed line on the high side, we get a little shallower look, but still, I mean, our speed line right here would come back in and test something like in this range to the downside here. So either case, this corrective leg, or however you view the broadening formation, it looks to me like we could roll right back over just as quick as we rolled back up. Jumping over to the NASDAQ, not much of a different picture. We need to break above this, what sort of is our trend resistance that's formed. We wicked up to, created a new high out of it. Notice we didn't take out the body of these candles here. Did not take those bodies. Whereas, in this scenario, we took the body. So that was clearly more bullish at that point. However, this last leg hasn't met that criteria. So we really need to take out this wick at 613.35. Otherwise, we are going to roll back over. Even with this 3 here, the challenging part looks like an ABC to me. So to some degree, we look a little more bearish as far as the look on the NASDAQ versus the SPY, and equality is probably right to this level. I mean, pretty close to that. So, equality's back around 580. However, as long as there is news that we've got a deal or a deal is working with Iran and there's a potential this can be settled without additional extensive troops on the ground, etc., then, I think that we could rally. We could come back and test this confluence wick. In other words, when this is where we have a number of tags of that resistance, then that's the most likely place for us to reject back around 629. And, being mindful that this is kind of a double top, but we need to take out that prior high from that October of 25 versus the January of 26 high. So a little higher, lower high would be totally viable here, and then we could continue our leg back to the downside. So again, in my book, nothing really has changed as far as the indices are concerned. We're just in this range. The NASDAQ is a broader range between 584 and this 632. So, I mean, we're talking a $50 range. Now, let's take a look at Bitcoin. Now, we got a nice little pop this morning. It's following through a little bit as we go into the end of the day. Wicked up right at to just about 74,200. And then we, pulled back a little bit. And now we're building back up on that candle for the day. I think we do test this invalidation line at 80K. Now, whether or not that holds or not, and we get this 5-wave down that I see here, only time's going to tell. I don't have a lot of conviction that we have the strength without the government buying Bitcoin. That's just my mindset is the liquidity's not there. This Iran thing is affecting the yen carry trade. We have a higher risk now than we did 2 weeks ago or 3 months ago of that yen trade potentially unwinding. Main reason is margins get tightened, and what that is that going to force positions to do? Get close. So my bias is we do get back up to about 83, 84, and then we reject again. That's just my 2 cents. All right, IBIT, it actually looks like a decent chase. We filled the first gap, got another gap overhead. I would say the likelihood here is we fill that second gap. We will know if it's failing if this wick gets taken out 40.47. Outside of that, I think we go back up and test the shelf. So you can probably trade this long if you were hungry and wanted to try something. Not a huge position size, but I do like to look back to the upside. Now let's take a look at XLE. Now I've moved my count down. My assumption is this is our 3 because it still is our longest wave. I did have a little higher price up towards our trend resistant line, but basically how we've come off with this news, the reality is peaking drive 1, peaking drive 2, peaking drive 3, we probably back test to 51 here. So I don't want to add long. The challenging part of every tape that I'm looking at, almost all of them look exactly the same or similar to the degree where, I don't want to add here. I don't want to add on the high side in this kind of market. I don't. I want to wait for something like Palantir, where I have a defined risk and the risk reward is in my favor, not against. So like, for example, I'll just use the Palantir trade as an example. We were down at the base of our formation. We started to come out of it. We got some volume. We popped up above the prior candle. Boom. We put a position on. We're up $6. I would rather wait for that setup in this market, take fewer setups because my conviction to the long side is greater. Or maybe like this morning, taking Intuit short. There are going to be setups that way. I have not been adding a lot of short. The reason is because I didn't have confirmation. I really have. And that makes it very challenging because now we don't have the breadth building, even though we did see it this morning. We did see it even a little yesterday. We do not have the breadth we had in January, and we clearly do not have the breadth we had in November and December. So we're in a totally different world as far as I'm concerned when we look at this. So when we get a pullback like an XLE to 51, now I get interested. Maybe I'll take a shot on my 5 up to $61. But to be very frank, I would rather chase a 3 than a 5 any day. So that's sort of my mindset. Let's look at some of our names we are in. Palantir, nice run here. We entered in right off of this wick down here. Didn't actually get filled until 145 simply because of the time of day and the weekend that was there. We were right around this candle. Right now we're just holding. I want to see how far this one pushes. Right now it's aggressive. I mean, it is. And we have substantial upside as far, if you look at our other pushes, I would say this count is totally viable. Not only that, I think Palantir's on the right side of the tape. Defense, what are they in? AI, right now, this war going on between Anthropic and the Department of Defense actually is a huge play for Palantir, because they're going to need to come in with whoever the next contractor is and assist with the stuff they've already built as far as the security features within Anthropic. So they're basically rinse and repeat doing it again. Well, what's that going to do for their stock? Obviously, they're going to get some additional revenues that was not on the table if the contract stayed with Anthropic because they're already built. It's sort of like building a new sauce engine. If you have one, you don't need to build a new one, right? So I think that catalyst was the right way to look at this trade because it pushes back towards the upside. All right, Planet Labs, I don't currently have a piece on it, but I do want a piece. I just need a pullback somewhere to this shelf here, 23.87. Then I'm going to want to chase the rest of that leg back up. I do think we break out all-time highs and ultimately head towards about 37, but it hasn't given to me yet, so I haven't known. Now, we still are in Corsair Gaming. This is a memory play. Back around my AI infrastructure as a thesis. However, it's not really getting a bid like I would like it to. But then again, it's held up relative strength in this market where with this little, look what we've done over the last week when the market was pulling down. Basically, we held up pretty well. So relative strength, we just need the storyline to come to the stock. And then, hey, we probably do test these highs. So at this point, hold, roadblock. Started to come back out. We got that little piece long. The only thing that I don't like about this is that maybe we got a 3 that may be coming down here, but we need to take out this wick. So as long as that wick holds at 63.85, I think it was, we just plug that in there. Boom, 63.26, sorry. I think we're fine. I think we head up towards this one around $80. I mean, in this tape, I like the look. Again, this is the pattern I want to chase. Notice how we have this clean flush. We have a solid pattern. Broadening formation at the base of it, which is an ending diagonal when we put in this low. Now we're putting in this flat wicked off of it. Notice our RSI here. We had our confirming low here, a divergent low here, right? We built back up, we rejected, so we tested the highs, came in just a little bit of wick. That is very bouncy bounce. That typically a name really runs on that kind of look, which is one reason I'm holding, or I have held, because I've just been looking at the tape, I've been looking at the candles, and I'm like, I like the way this one looks. Now, AMTX basically did not work. We got that push, we rejected, and it was pretty much done. I closed out at 155, 152 on the other piece. I'm down to like 500 shares on this, so I got like nothing. So, roughly $1.40. As long as my 133 holds, I'm not going to put anything back on. However, we get back above this 147, I'll add it back. That pretty much is the game plan. All right, let's take a look at some names requests that we have. ENPH actually looks pretty good. I mean, the only downside here is it's kind of a broadening formation. Peaking drive 1, peaking drive 2, peaking drive 3, boom. So that was our first impulse, right? So now we got a broadening kind of formation coming in on what is drive 1, which is very challenging. I'm sitting here as I'm looking at the tape. So this, as an impulse, is extremely broad, which quite often leads to very tight 5s to the ISO. So wave 4 should be much shallower than this once we get above this noise. So I'm going to come out to the weekly on this one. So as long as our confirmation line here holds, that really is my line in the sand, that 41.35. And I'm not concerned. My prior invalidation I had, roughly down here at this 39.81. I will hold for that degree of heat if I was holding. Only reason is because of how broad the formation is. Cleanly, this is a nice impulse coming in this. This reacted to the market, which I would think this name would, all right? It doesn't have a huge position related to the Middle East. Supply chains were disrupted. We should expect some smaller names to get a little noisy. So at this point, nothing's changed for me. I think we do head back up to the upside. I would trim to half, though, if we get below that 39.68. Indy. I don't want to touch it here. My count suggests that we're going to go much lower. Just looking at this, I'm going to come out to the monthly again on this one. Just give you a visual. That's the count that I have on this. So we got this broadening 4. So it's an ending diagonal. Most likely as we come in and put just a little lower low below that 155. Yeah. Hey, it didn't work. I'd cut it if I was holding. Pins. Actually, halfway decent spot. Look at the daily. Coming back out of here, filled the gap. I'm going to come in and just say, boom, let's do this off of the daily and just say, hey, we take out this wick right here, I'd be out. Otherwise, it's worth the risk to hold to the upside. And our first target, just throwing up an impulse count here, just roughly from this leg where we are. I'm going to call this 1. We'll either head up towards about 220 or 2251 or to 24. But I'm going to say 2251, get a back test, and then we come back. So we should head back towards about that 28. Now, Hood is getting a decent bid this morning with Bitcoin. However, it's not as impulsive. Let me clarify. I just wanted to, so it's mediocre in reference. I'd rather trade Bitcoin. So 3 should come in here, and then we probably reject just from that look. I mean, we get above this. It's got a confirmation. So, it's just like our line in the sand. Know when you're right, know when you're wrong. Right here, you're right. It is long, okay? To what degree? Only time will tell us what the degree is. So it's just where we want to say, yeah, gets above there. I do want to chase a full position size. Maybe up here around 102, I start trimming. But right now, Hood looks pretty good to the upside. All right, let's look at GEV. Likely rolls over here. Peaking drive 1, peaking drive 2, peaking drive 3. Just throwing some fibs up on that. I'm going to look at this leg. I'm not going to look at the whole thing. So 50% back, 755 is a likely point from 848. I'm wrong. It closes above this wick here at this roughly 868.90. GE, same look. Peaking drive 1, peaking drive 2, peaking drive 3. However, this has an advantage because of the natural gas fundamentals there. I don't think that's really started to build out. Their orders were out until 29, but I honestly think their orders go out to 2030, 2032, maybe even 2035. Simply because we're still not even at 10x where we need to be for AI infrastructure. If this is that new industrial revolution, yeah, boom. Now, we do have what appears to be an ending diagonal. So, looking at this, this next leg should take us up to about 400 when we get that pullback, clean pullback. We didn't hold this shelf. Note that. Okay, so that 332.73 needed to really hold it. Body didn't close below it though, so that's a plus. Right. However, it breached it twice, wick off. So sellers got exhausted. We don't clear this candle, we're going to come back and test this low. Then we find out for sure. This shelf is what I would want to hold no matter what, 316.77. But at this point, depending on what your cost average is, that'd be my decision on whether I held. I mean, if you've been holding this since 279 or 290, you got a little bit of room here. In reality, if you're going to just come in and use confirmed trend support, it's going to bring you in. It's going to make this quick for a minute. 50% of that candle, roughly. So, your number is close below 329.14. I'd be trimming. That's what I would be looking. AAOI, beautiful thing. I don't know why the hell I sold it. Oh, don't you love that terminology? All right, so let's come out to the monthly on this one. Try and get a visual of where this thing can go. It is just now poking its head above the high. Notice that high, right? The challenging part is peaking drive 1, peaking drive 2, peaking drive 3. 3618 or the 426. One of those two, it's going to reject. The rejection is not going to be pretty either. So let me come in here. I'm just going to say at the 4236. If I was still holding it, I would be trimming. I'd be taking profits into that. Right? Minimum back test is probably going to be to 72. So, roughly about 26 bucks from where our current price is. So it's going to pull back. So this one needs to be managed. Okay, this is one where you want to look at it. You don't hear me say that very often. We are confirming. That's the main thing we want to look at. Now let's come down to the weekly. Okay, we're still confirming. Let's come down to the daily. We are diverging a little bit, maybe. No, we're not diverging yet. We get this next high, we will diverge. So we want to watch that spread between this high and where that next high comes in, probably around 125. That distance between that next peaking high is going to determine what our third peaking drive is, which happens to be right around 143. So I'm sort of projecting, peaking drive 1, we get peaking drive 2 here, peaking drive 3 comes in right around there. That's sort of my thought on that look, and that's how I would manage. Now, nice pop out of this. Notice that XABC pattern I put in there. How beautiful is that thing? It's getting up. Really doesn't confirm the trend change until it gets back above, but it is working. It is working. Yes, I like it, the upside. So that is, another one. As it continues to work, keep building your position on that. Full position size by the time we get over 122. That would be my game plan. It is not slowing down. We're confirming. So we are, by all tells, with this chart and this look, is we're going to at least test this 137. And it's very likely that we come back to this point with this kind of euphoria in this flux. AST Space Mobile totally recovered, and I'm not in it. Oh, don't you just love it? The wonderful part about trading. Jeez. Okay, so this probably was our ABC. So we were done right there. I mean, it is not. I'm going to go up to the monthly on this one as well. Maybe the weekly. So I get rid of all mine. And I'm just going to leave those there for visual. So we got count strong. We have a clear trend up. We're putting in a fourth drive. Peaking drive 1, peaking drive 2, peaking drive 3. So, and you don't hear me talk about this very often because they're so few and far between. But in a trend, right, quite often we can put in 5s and 8s. So, this would be our 4, then we back test, then we put it in a 5. That 423.6 is a good spot for it to recheck based on the extensions that I have up there. And the fact that we came in right on this shelf is extremely bullish. I would not be surprised if we get another general candle like this and gets us back above 135. So if you're in it, hold it. I wouldn't add unless we back. That's the hard. This shelf gets tagged at 97. Yeah, then I might add a little. However, I do like it to the upside. I like the longer term visual. Just coming out to the monthly again. Completely different view when you look at it out of the month. You come in here, this is our 1, this is our 2, right? So our 3 is going to be up here. It's still got a huge amount. That 423.6 is where, no, I had the fibs in the right spot. So that is where that could push all of the 618, which I don't even have on my fibs. We clear those highs. We got a shot at 420 here from where we are. If you're ever going to chase a name, this is one you could chase. I don't like the risk reward in this market with what's going on though. MACD, clearly broad but toppy. RSI on the monthly is diverging. RSI on the weekly is diverging. RSI on the daily is confirming. So it's telling us we got this next leg up. So this is a mountain structure. Flush, trough, peak, trough. So, the next measurement, just looking at that, and I'm just going to draw it once just for, if your assumption this is 255 is totally viable. Then maybe something like that back to the upside. Except it'll be much more euphoric. This tape is in breakout mode. So it will be like this. It'll be vertical. It could be vertical, I should say. Shouldn't. Not guaranteed that it will, but that's sort of the look. All right, GTLB. GitLab. I haven't looked at this one in a while either. Let's go out to the weekly. Not done. Confirming. MACD is wide open. MAC gets ready to cross. Still broadening. No, it's not done. Let's come out. I want to look at the monthly on this. Beautiful. Look, took out the lows. Well, it just wasn't confirming on this second low. However, I will say this. Gets back above this wick. Then it's worth a shot. Just how euphoric. So I'm going to call that our confirmation line. We're confirming that we potentially could make a trend change. However, let me make a copy of this and plug it up here. It really does not confirm until it breaks. Way the heck back up there, 52 bucks, whatever it is, 52.38. So we got a lot of room back to the upside. It's a nice look, nice clean equality as far as an ABC structure if you're looking at it that way. All right, Sunrun, it's not done. So what you actually have here is what appears to be an impulse. So this is 1, this is 3, this is 4, and this is 5, right? Now we came in here, we put an ABC structure, an elongated effort to go up. Very euphoric push, by the way, when you look at that structure. Very hard rejection for that kind of euphoria. So this was some kind of news that pushed this in. So that's an ABC structure. We've already put in what is an ABC structure, and it looks like it's going to become most likely is going to be a ending diagonal. And the reason is 2 is shallow, and I'm going to bet that we get something like this where it's a little broader, back test of some validation, and then we possibly come back to 930. So shelf broken. I'm just going to come in here and draw it. So this is visually how I don't want to count the wick, but shelf broken, right? Shelf broken, right? Shelf broken, right? So all the shelves back to the upside are broken. So our next shelf is way the heck down here, right? Similar to equality on 5 down. So if this becomes impulsive and 3 really does fully extend, and then we still get a broadening formation where we put in a little bit of a bottom, that levels out to about where that shelf is, and that shelf will be what holds. That's your line in the sand. I would not add here with that one. All right, expand energy. It looks like an impulse. This is our 1. 3 should come in something like this. Let me throw some fibs up there on this. Give me a visual. See how good my eyes are today. Believe it or not, some days I'm like dead on. I within a penny when I draw my lines. Other days I miss it by 50%. 9102, roughly. Just going to leave it there for a second. So, pretty close. 618's right here. Probably 50% back would be a better spot. It could be right here, though. We could get a shallow. But roughly about 160 is viable. Say about halfway. That structure looks pretty solid for that tape. Done nothing wrong. Closes below this shelf right here. And that structure is broken just a little bit. I would be at least a half position or less there. Reason is because the likelihood in a weak market scenario, even though today wasn't weak, so we take out this wick and back test this here. The reason is because this look right here. Looking at this speed line, boom, quality comes in. We didn't quite test it. So it looks incomplete to me. MACD is sort of crossing lower, not aggressively, but that's a consolidation pattern right there. So you got this flag. So you don't want that flag to break if you're going to hold this, because this flag tested the upside. So you got this little box right here. That flag breaks, it's done because you got this nice pole, broad flag though. But we got this here. Look at how broad we got. Look how long this happened. So let's just cheat, come over here and say, okay, we got this. How long did that happen? Right before we broke out. So we could totally have this right here. So we could be here that long. We could be here till October 27th. That's the MO of the tape says, hey, we could be here a long time. Clean staircase. Notice that. Clean staircase. You got that corrective wedge, sort of that broadening formation that came in here. And I'm just going to call it, say here. So you got kind of this look here. So, we could reject. We could. It has the look that it could. Doesn't mean it will, but you have to recognize when you see a broadening formation, it opens up Pandora's box to the downside, and we just want to recognize that in our position. So how would I trade this? I would be body of this candle. I'd take half right there. That would be what I would cut. If we got below that, roughly, what is it? 103.04. $3 lower from where we are now. That's the way I would trade. AIRO. It actually looks promising. Going to come back to the daily on this one. I don't like those wicks on the weekly. Maybe see if they're still there on the weekly. No, they were there on the monthly. Notice how aggressive that monthly wick is. That wick right now. That follow through wick. All right, let's go back to the daily. It's wanning here. MACD is not emotionally. Notice how euphoric MACD was here on this leg. We don't have it's flat. It's flat. However, it looks to me like this is gone though. So it does look done to me there. You have clean divergent, confirming low, divergent low, pretty solid spot, nice back test. It's a good spot, take long if we didn't have that freaking wick right. It's above this shelf, it's rejecting here. It's thinking aloud what I'm seeing. So it gets back above this ledge, then I have some conviction to the long side. That really is where, well, actually, I'm incorrect looking at this. The confirmation line really occurs at 1363 where we have a clean trend change. But this does look like an impulse up. I mean, it does. It's pretty clean. I think the question with any small cap is the funding mechanisms, are they in the right place? So I would do a little more homework on any small caps, making sure that we have the structure in place for financing or financing to be rolled. Because even with the Fed coming in, I can tell you right now with what I'm hearing about Japan, liquidity is going to get restrained probably by the end of the first quarter or early second quarter. So, I mean, we got weak. I think it gets constrained. Now, does it stay there? Don't know yet. All right, let's look at Credo. Let's start with a daily on this one. Now, this is one of our AI infrastructure names. Nice buy zone. Took out monthly trend support. It's not a bad thing. Coming up to the weekly. MACD is not crossing. It is still confirming. It is not done to the downside. I'd like it more at the $74 to $50 range. The shelf holds. You might want to take a shot there, add a piece there. But I don't think we're done with this AI infrastructure thing. I think the reality hits the market. It's overdone considering we don't have the infrastructure in place. That's just my 2 cents. It's overdone. Nvidia's overdone, right? It's just they're selling the chips, but we're not going to have power to run them. So what's going to happen to those orders? They're going to cancel or delay their delivery. We already know they are. It's written all over it. So even though the AI infrastructure, and realize that's a 2030 bill, 2026, so we're talking 4 years out, I would much rather wait till the shelf gets tested than maybe try it there. All right, let's look at UNG. We totally rejected on this as far as the look. Now we broadened. I had this XYZ pattern in here. It still hasn't changed. It's still there. However, it doesn't look to me like it's done. Most likely, as far as the breadth, is we do something more like this. So I still think we get this lower. Now that's probably worth it, 1037 a shot. Because realize we are going to have some tight natty as long as Cotter's shut down. However, right now, this tape is not reflecting U.S. natural gas week. And that could simply be that we don't have the resources to move it because all of the LNG tankers that we currently have are full anyway. At least that was my understanding when I think about that. So I like it, better at 1043. UMAC. Come back to the daily on this one. I got all kinds of lines here. Hasn't taken out my confirming trend support. Actually could push this up to that wick. So roughly 1353 and 757 is what I would use as my anchor. Now let me just go through a couple of other little names here on my watch list. This Intel. I like it here. I do. I like it here. I like it. We bounced right off of it. We take out, I want to see follow through just because I don't believe the Iran thing is done. So just like Palantir, if I have some conviction. So I want to wait with that tight of a confirmation right over our head, so above that 47.63. I mean, it's a buck away. We kind of confirmed on this low in there. So this is a launching pad. So we're going here, right? The question is, do we come in and put in one more low, maybe using this price point as our anchor? And we're pretty close to that anyways. I mean, it's not like it's out of question here. So it could come in. That would be my highest conviction entry around $40, but I like Intel. Costco, totally recovered. Look at that count there. Man, broke above that high, heading towards 83. Cash secured puts here is a good idea. MACD is just crossing. A beast when it comes down to U.S. strength. This implies we're going to have total retail recovery. That gap is a long ways up there at $85. $5 is a nice trade on cost. All right, let's look at TSM. Just now sort of hitting the base of the wedge, as far as that trend support. I like that look from right here. However, China goes in. It'd be better if it was here, 313. I think we do take out the highs. I mean, we got a lot of chip manufacturing that's got to be done. Not only that, I think we see more money going into TSM in a US factory or destination elsewhere. Because right now, with what's going on with China, I'm forgetting the graph. I was like a histogram of where all the parts for our high-tech military gear comes from. And like every component we have is totally dependent on China. And I'm like, man, that's got to change. Doesn't matter how cheap it is. We can't get it. If they stop shipping it, where are we? I mean, and I forget, it's sort of like the oil embargo when oil just stopped moving and we ran out of gas here in the U.S. I mean, what's going to happen to our military when we run out of parts? So I think we're going to see, and Taiwan Semiconductor is an optimal candidate just because of what rights they own to the printing presses for chips. So, however, if I come out and I look at my count, I don't like it until it pulls back to this 307. So, but it's just an extremely euphoric take. If I was going to chase anything to the long side, comes back, it hits this trend support. It's pretty solid to the upside. CRML metal. Now, this was that Venezuelan thing. And I'm pointing this out because it looks like it's done once it gets back up out of here. So we close above. This is going to be the same scenario I drafted out with Intel, gets back above this 1143 roughly. That sort of is my conviction to chase that long. I'd like to see a little more market strength, a little more follow through, a little consistency there too. I really don't. I know you guys have noticed I haven't really been adding the longs, been extremely selective. Right now, I don't plan on changing my mind until I have a reason to change. All right. But again, this is a name that I like. Now, as far as Tesla is concerned, we could be done here. 487.74, and we put in a 496.18. It's consistent with a flat. Let's look at the monthly just for a second. Now, structurally, we get a little bit of a different image. Peaking drive 1, peaking drive 2. I'm going to call this grouping 2 only because drive 1, drive 2, drive 3. So my thinking is we'd still get a 5. So just assuming this is our broader formation, 3 would look something like this. I mean, it actually has some decent upside. Let's drop some fibs on that. Give me a better visual. 101.81. So, easy measurement would be, it could be a leading diagonal though, which means a shallower 3 could be the 236 or 3618, then put it a flat top. Bias is this shelf needs to hold right here at 328.98. Conviction entry would be back at 266.79. RSI was kind of confirming on this low, sort of. It implies that we are going to go more to the upside when you come down to the daily. Step down to the 4-hour for a second on this one. Same look. Looking at the weekly again. Clearly we're topping, kind of confirming, diverging. On this high here, we kind of confirmed. We didn't get another high. I would say it's more likely that we come in and put one more little high up here before it rejects. Outside of that, bias doesn't change when I look at RSI. I still like it back here at this shelf. Well, that's what I have for this week, folks. Great trading. Until next time.